He had spent most of his life filming wildlife and believed there was little left that could truly shock him. But on that sun-bleached African plain, a single zoom through his camera made his heart sink. A baby elephant stood alone in the thorn brush, thin beyond its years, and tightly wrapped around its body was a black rubber tire. Locals said it had been trapped like that for nearly a year. No one knew how it had survived, and no one yet understood that what they were witnessing was not the end of a tragedy, but the beginning of an incredible story. Ethan Carter had filmed wildlife long enough to trust patterns. Herds moving to water, dust lifting in quiet sheets, calves tucked safely between adult legs. You respected distance because the savannah didn't forgive mistakes. That afternoon in Amboseli, the sun sat straight overhead, bleaching the color out of the land. Ethan eased his Land Cruiser into the thin shade of an acacia, shut the door softly, and raised his long lens to find the elephants he'd been tracking since dawn. At first, he saw only the usual: heat shimmer, a few zebras in the far glare. Then, near a thorny patch of brush, something shifted, low and unsteady. Ethan zoomed in. His hands went cold. A baby elephant pushed forward in short, exhausted steps, not a playful calf trotting after its mother, but a small body worn down to angles. Its ears drooped. Its trunk hung as if it weighed too much to lift, and around its middle was a black tire. Ethan's mind tried to argue with what he was seeing, but the rubber ring was real, wedged tight around the calf's belly like a cruel belt. The surface was cracked with age. Dust clung to it. The calf took 3 steps, stopped, and swayed as if the ground itself had turned soft. He lowered the camera and stared with his own eyes, as if that might make the sight vanish. It didn't. He'd watched drought and predators and storms. This was different. This was human trash turned into a sentence. The calf turned its head and looked straight at him. It didn't trumpet. It didn't charge. It just held his gaze, calm in a way that felt wrong, like fear had burned out and left something quieter behind. For a moment, Ethan had the unsettling thought that the calf knew exactly what he was, a chance that might not come again. He stayed back. A lone calf was rarely truly alone. Somewhere nearby, a mother could be watching, and a full-grown elephant didn't need much reason to kill. Ethan scanned the brush and the open flats for the telltale movement of legs or the low ripple of a herd. Nothing. Just wind and heat. He took a slow step forward, then another, keeping his body small. "Easy," he said without thinking. "I'm not coming fast." The calf shifted, and the tire scraped against its skin. Ethan saw the deep groove carved into flesh, the raw patches where hair was gone. The tire wasn't just stuck. It was stealing space from every breath the calf tried to take. Ethan crouched and used the lens again. Inside the tire, mud had packed in hard, almost like stone. That meant time, a long time. The calf was carrying dead weight that never got lighter, day after day, as its body tried to grow against a ring that never would. He glanced at the sky. Daylight had a few hours left. When the heat broke, predators would move. A struggling calf was an announcement on the plain. Ethan pulled his satellite phone out, held it up until it caught signal, and dialed the rescue number he'd been given in Nairobi. He hated making that call. Rescue teams were always stretched thin. But looking at the calf, he didn't see a problem that could wait. When the line connected, he gave his name and coordinates. "I've got a baby elephant with a tire around its midsection. It's in bad shape. I need help fast." Instructions came back through the static. "Keep distance. Don't provoke any adults. Don't try to pull the tire. Wait for the team." They were on their way, but it would take time. Ethan ended the call and looked up. The calf had edged out of the brush as if even the thorns had stopped feeling like shelter. Its knees trembled. It dipped its head, searching for something it couldn't reach. Water, maybe. Or the comfort of a body bigger than its own. Ethan swallowed hard. He pictured a year of this, months of hunger, thirst, and the slow tightening of a body trapped inside its own growth. The thought made his stomach twist. A twig snapped behind him. Ethan turned carefully and saw a young herder standing at the edge of the acacia shade, barefoot, a coil of rope in one hand. The boy didn't step closer. He just stared at the calf with wide, pained eyes. "That one," the boy said softly. "We've seen it since last rainy season." Ethan felt the words land like a stone. "Almost a year," the boy added, and looked away, like he couldn't bear to keep watching. "It never goes far, like it's waiting." Ethan looked back at the calf, the tire, the raw skin, and the endless sun overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called once, sharp and lonely. And Ethan understood with a sick clarity that the story hadn't begun when he arrived. He had only walked into it at the moment it was about to end. The young herder introduced himself as Noah, his voice low, as if sound itself might draw danger. He stayed a careful distance from the calf, eyes flicking between Ethan and the open plain. "It comes here when the sun drops," he said. "Always alone." Ethan watched the calf breathe. Each rise of its chest seemed delayed, as though the air had to negotiate with the tire before it was allowed inside. He knelt and unscrewed a bottle of water, pouring a thin stream onto the dry earth a few feet away. The calf reached with its trunk, missed, and shifted its weight. Its legs buckled slightly, then steadied. It never cried out. That quiet was worse than panic. Noah crouched beside Ethan, careful not to make sudden movements. "We tried once," he said. "Last year, some men thought they could pull it off." He shook his head. The tire didn't move. The calf screamed. The mother came. Ethan felt his chest tighten. "What happened?" "She chased everyone away," Noah said. "After that, no one touched the calf again." The calf lowered its head, trying to reach the damp soil. The tire stopped it short. Ethan cupped water in his palm and lifted it slowly. The calf hesitated, then touched his hand with the tip of its trunk. The contact was feather-light, uncertain. It drank a little at a time, as if afraid the water might disappear if it moved too fast. Ethan stayed still, every muscle locked. He felt the calf's breath against his skin, warm and uneven. The tire scraped softly as the calf adjusted its stance, and Ethan saw where the rubber had worn through hide, leaving raw, pink flesh beneath. Flies hovered, but didn't land, driven off by the slow swish of the calf's ears. "How long?" Ethan asked quietly. Noah didn't answer at first. He picked up a small stone and rolled it between his fingers. "Since the last long rains," he said finally. "Almost a year. It grew, but the tire didn't. Every month it got worse." Ethan looked at the tire again, at the dirt packed inside it. He imagined the calf lying down at night, the weight of the ring lifting its belly off the ground, forcing it to sleep with its neck bent at an angle no body was meant to hold. He imagined the slow accumulation of mud, dung, dead insects, each ounce adding to the burden. "Does the herd come near?" Ethan asked. Noah nodded. "Sometimes, from far away." He gestured toward the horizon. "They don't stay. Too many people, too much noise, but—" He hesitated, then pointed to a thorn bush a short distance away. Tied to one of the branches was a strip of red ribbon, faded and frayed. Ethan frowned. "What's that?" Noah's mouth tightened. "A ranger tied it months ago, said it would help them find the calf again." He paused. No one came back. The ribbon stirred in the breeze, a small, helpless signal in a vast landscape. Ethan felt a flicker of anger, sharp and useless. He pushed it down. Anger wouldn't keep the calf alive. A sound carried on the wind, low and distant. Noah straightened, alert. "Hyenas," he said. "Not close. Yet?" Ethan stood and scanned the plain. Nothing moved, but the savannah had a way of hiding threats until they were already near. He checked his watch. The rescue team was still at least an hour out. The calf swayed again. Ethan moved closer without thinking, placing himself between the animal and the open ground. He could feel the risk in the air. If an adult elephant charged now, there would be no time to run. But leaving the calf alone felt worse. "It's been surviving on scraps," Noah said, almost to himself. "Old grass, whatever it finds. Sometimes the vultures follow it." Ethan's throat tightened. He pictured a year of that life, day after day, with no relief, no understanding of why the pain never stopped. He knelt again and offered more water. The calf drank, then rested its trunk briefly against Ethan's knee, as if testing whether he was solid, whether he would stay. In the distance, a shape shifted. Then another. Ethan raised his binoculars. Large bodies, gray, moving slow and deliberate. "Elephants," Noah whispered. "Females." Ethan's pulse quickened. Relief and fear tangled together. If the herd came closer, the calf might be protected, or Ethan might be trampled into the dust. The lead elephant lifted her head, ears spreading wide. She took a step forward, then another. The ground seemed to hold its breath. Behind Ethan, the calf let out a low, broken sound, something between a sigh and a call, and suddenly the waiting felt heavier than the tire itself. The herd did not come any closer. After a long minute, the lead female turned her body slightly, signaling restraint rather than retreat. The message was clear enough for Ethan to understand. They were watching, not intervening. Not yet. That was when Noah spoke again, his voice quieter than before. "It didn't start like this," he said. "It was just a calf, loud, curious, always too close to trouble." Ethan kept his eyes on the elephants in the distance, but he listened. The story felt like something the land itself had been holding, waiting for someone to hear it properly. Last year, Noah said, the rains had come late. When they finally arrived, they pushed everything toward the road. Water, animals, people, and trash. Old tires, plastic drums, broken crates left behind by trucks that cut across the edge of the reserve. No one cleaned it up. Out here, nothing ever really disappeared. It just waited. The calf had been smaller then, round in the way young elephants are, with legs that still seemed surprised by their own strength. It stayed close to its mother, weaving in and out beneath her belly, bumping against her legs. When the herd paused near the roadside to drink from a shallow runoff pool, the calf wandered. The tire lay half hidden in tall grass, black against the mud. To a calf, it must have looked like a game, a tunnel. Something new in a world that was mostly the same shapes repeated again and again. It put its head through first, pulled back, did it again, easy, harmless. The other calves watched, then lost interest. The calf tried again, this time pushing farther. Its front legs went in, then its shoulders. The rubber flexed, stretched, then snapped back tighter than before. The calf froze, pulled, pushed. The tire slid down, past the narrow part of its chest, and stopped hard against its belly. That was when it screamed. The sound carried across the flat ground, sharp and panicked. The mother was there almost instantly, her body swinging between the calf and the open world. She wrapped her trunk around the IC tire and pulled. The rubber bit back. She tried again, harder. The tire didn't give. Other females joined in. They pushed with their heads, braced with their legs, tugged until dust rose around them. The calf thrashed, making it worse. Each movement drove the tire tighter. The ground near the road was uneven, cut by old tire tracks and ruts from heavy trucks. As the herd shifted, the calf stumbled. The tire slipped lower, wedging itself in a place no one could reach properly. They worked until dusk, until the light drained away and the air cooled. The calf cried until its voice went hoarse. The mother never left its side. But elephants live by movement. Water does not wait. Grass does not wait. When the herd moved on, the mother stayed behind at first, pacing, turning back again and again. By morning, the choice was no longer theoretical. Staying meant risking everything. Leaving meant leaving one behind. She followed them, Noah said, but she came back, over and over. The calf learned quickly what the tire meant. It could no longer lie flat. When it slept, its belly hung in the air, supported by rubber instead of ground. Its neck bent at an angle that made breathing harder. As weeks passed, mud packed into the tire. Rain dried. Rain returned. Each layer stayed. The calf grew. The tire did not. It tried to follow the herd when they passed nearby, but it could not keep up. Its steps were shorter, its balance worse. Eventually, the herd stopped waiting. Nature rarely explains itself when it moves on. Still, the mother did not disappear. She stayed at a distance, far enough to avoid roads and people, close enough to see whether the calf was still alive. She chased away smaller threats when she could. Other times, she watched from behind acacia trees, unable to cross the invisible line where human noise began. Ethan felt a tightness behind his eyes as Noah finished. He looked at the calf standing a few yards away, its sides marked by a year of quiet suffering. The tire was not just an object. It was time made solid. In the distance, the herd shifted again. One of the females lifted her trunk, scenting the air. Somewhere beyond them, a low laugh rolled across the plain. Not loud, not close, but close enough. Noah's jaw tightened. "Hyenas don't forget," he said. Ethan checked the horizon, then the calf, then the satellite phone in his pocket. The past had caught up to the present, and the present was running out of patience. The sound came again, closer this time. A low, broken laugh that didn't belong to any bird or wind. Ethan felt it more than he heard it, a vibration that slid under the skin and settled in the chest. Hyenas? Noah shifted his weight and scanned the brush line. "They won't rush," he said. "Not yet. They watch first." Ethan knew that too. Hyenas were patient in a way that felt almost thoughtful. They tested boundaries. They waited for mistakes. And a calf that couldn't run was not a mystery to them. It was a calculation. The baby elephant swayed again, its trunk brushing the ground as if searching for balance. The tire dragged a shallow groove in the dust when it moved. Every step announced weakness. Ethan forced himself to breathe slowly. Panic would only make him move wrong, and wrong movements out here had consequences. He pulled his drone from the back seat of the cruiser, hands steady by habit, even as his pulse climbed. The battery indicator glowed green. Not full, but enough. He launched it gently. The drone lifted with a sharp whine, rising just above head height before pushing out toward the open ground. The sound cut through the stillness, foreign and irritating. From the brush, shapes shifted. Gray backs, rounded ears, tails flicking low. 5 of them, maybe 6. They stopped when the drone darted toward them, heads lifting, noses working. Ethan sent the drone lower, weaving in quick, erratic patterns. The hyenas backed off a few steps, confused but not frightened enough to leave. They had learned patience from hunger. "Battery won't last," Noah warned. "I know," Ethan said. He brought the drone back and landed it near his feet, conserving power. Silence rushed in to fill the gap it left. The hyenas remained at a distance, sitting now, watching, waiting for night, waiting for exhaustion. Ethan glanced at the calf. Its sides moved faster now, breaths shallow and uneven. He knelt again and poured water into his palm. The calf drank, then leaned forward unexpectedly, resting part of its weight against Ethan's shoulder. He froze. The contact was brief, barely more than a touch, but it carried the heavy trust of something with no other options left. Ethan could feel the calf's heat through his shirt, the slight tremor that ran through its frame. Behind them, the air changed. Noah stiffened. "Elephants!" he whispered. Ethan turned slowly. They had come closer without sound, massive shapes emerging from the heat haze. 5 females, spread in a loose arc. The lead elephant stepped forward, ears out, head high. Her presence was immediate and overwhelming, like standing too close to a moving wall. Ethan stood, careful not to turn his back on the calf. He lowered his arms and avoided the elephant's eyes, every instinct screaming at him to retreat, even as he knew running would only trigger a charge. The calf lifted its head and made a thin, broken call, not loud enough to travel far, but clear enough to be recognized. The lead elephant stopped. She lifted her trunk and drew in a long breath, scenting the air. Dust clung to her skin. Her eyes flicked from Ethan to the calf and back again. For a moment, no one moved. Ethan felt sweat run down his spine. If she decided he was a threat, there would be no warning, no second chance. Noah took a small step forward and spoke softly in his language, low and rhythmic. Not words meant to command, but sounds meant to calm. The elephant's ears twitched. Then, from the far side, over the clearing, the hyenas laughed again. The sound cut through the standoff like a blade. The lead elephant swung her head toward the noise, ears flaring wide. The herd tightened instinctively, bodies shifting into a defensive pattern. The calf pressed closer to Ethan, caught between two dangers it couldn't escape. Ethan's mind raced. If the elephants charged the hyenas, the calf might be trampled. If they charged him, the calf would be left alone. Every outcome felt wrong. He raised his drone again, hesitated, then sent it straight up. The whine filled the air, sharp and insistent. The elephants startled slightly, heads lifting, attention pulled upward. The hyenas backed away another few steps, uncertain. The drone hovered, buying seconds. Not safety, just time. Far off, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of an engine. Noah's eyes widened. "The rescue team," he said. "They're close." Relief flickered through Ethan, fragile and dangerous. Vehicles meant help, but they also meant noise, confusion, and more reasons for the elephants to feel threatened. The lead elephant took one more step forward, then stopped. She stared at Ethan, at the calf, at the spinning shape above them. Her trunk lowered, brushing the ground once, twice. Then she turned her body slightly, signaling the others. The herd shifted back a pace, not leaving, but giving space. The engine sound grew louder. The hyenas melted into the brush, not gone, just waiting for another opening. Ethan exhaled slowly, his lungs burning as if he'd been holding his breath for an hour instead of a minute. The calf sagged against him again, heavier this time. The hardest part was about to begin. The first rescue truck crested the low rise with a cloud of dust trailing behind it. The engine noise rolled across the plain, heavy and unavoidable. Ethan felt the tension tighten instantly, like a wire pulled too far. The elephants reacted before the vehicle slowed. The lead female swung her head, ears flaring wide, and let out a low warning rumble that vibrated through the ground. The others shifted, feet stamping, bodies closing ranks. They were no longer observers. They were deciding. "Slow," Ethan muttered, though no one in the truck could hear him. "Please slow." The driver did. The vehicle crawled forward, tires crunching softly over dry grass, engine dropping to an idle. Doors stayed closed. No one jumped out. It was the right move, but the wrong moment had already arrived. The calf lifted its head at the sound, confused, frightened. Its legs trembled harder now, fatigue catching up all at once. The tire scraped the ground as it shifted, and the noise seemed to snap something in the lead elephant's mind. She took a step toward the truck, then another. Noah's breath caught. "If she charges," he said quietly, "she won't stop." Ethan positioned himself without thinking, placing his body between the calf and the oncoming elephant. It was a foolish instinct, and he knew it. A grown elephant could crush him without noticing. But stepping away felt like abandoning the calf at the exact moment it needed someone to stand. The lead elephant stopped just short of them. Dust swirled around her legs. Her trunk lifted, curling slightly as she tested the air again. Her eyes moved from Ethan to the calf, lingering on the black ring cutting into its body. For a long second, the savanna held its breath. Then a door opened. Ethan flinched. So did the elephants. A woman stepped out slowly, palms open, movements deliberate. She wore a faded field jacket and carried no equipment in her hands. Her hair was pulled back tight, streaked with gray, her face calm but alert. "Easy?" she said, her voice low and steady. "Easy, girl." This was Dr. Maya Reynolds. She didn't look at Ethan at first. She focused on the elephant, her posture respectful, her eyes soft but unblinking. She took one step forward, then stopped, giving the lead female time to read her intent. The elephant snorted, stamping once, then froze. The sound carried warning, not attack. Dr. Reynolds nodded slowly, as if acknowledging an agreement. Neither of them had spoken aloud. She glanced at Ethan then, just once, and gave the smallest shake of her head. "Don't move." Behind her, 2 rangers eased out of the truck, careful to stay close to the vehicle, hands empty, eyes wide. The second truck idled farther back, creating distance rather than pressure. The calf let out a weak sound and sagged. Ethan felt its weight shift again, heavier than before. He crouched instinctively, bracing it with his shoulder, murmuring nonsense words meant more for himself than for the animal. Dr. Reynolds finally turned her attention to the calf. Her eyes moved quickly, taking in the tire, the raw skin, the uneven breathing. She didn't touch it yet. She didn't need to. "How long?" she asked quietly. "Almost a year," Ethan said. His voice sounded rough in his own ears. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again. "We don't have the luxury of sedation," she said. "Heart rate's too weak. If we put it fully under, it might not come back." One of the rangers swallowed hard. "Then how do we work while it's awake," she said. "Carefully." A low rumble rolled through the elephant herd again. The lead female shifted her weight, still watching. She had not left. She was allowing this, for now. Dr. Reynolds stepped closer to the calf, slow enough that each movement felt measured in inches. She knelt and reached out, stopping just short of contact. The calf flinched, then stilled. "I'm here," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." She placed her hand against the calf's side, fingers gentle but firm. The skin beneath was hot, inflamed. Her jaw tightened. Inside the tire, she could see packed earth and debris, compressed so tightly it looked almost solid. This wasn't just a matter of pulling. It was excavation. She glanced up at Ethan. "I need room, and I need it to stay calm." Ethan nodded. He shifted his position slightly, adjusting his stance, so the calf leaned into him more fully. He could feel its heart racing through its ribs. The first ranger handed Dr. Reynolds a small shovel. She slid it carefully into the gap between tire and skin, testing resistance. The calf jerked, letting out a sharp cry. The lead elephant reacted instantly, ears flaring, head lifting high. "Stop," Dr. Reynolds said calmly. She froze, shovel still, hand steady. "Stop." Everyone did. Seconds stretched. The calf's cry faded into shallow breaths. The elephant's posture softened, just enough. Dr. Reynolds waited another full count of 10 before moving again. This time the shovel scraped against packed dirt. She eased out a small clump, then another. The smell rose immediately, sharp and sour. Old mud, waste, rot. Ethan swallowed hard. "This is going to take time," she said quietly. "And we don't have much." As if summoned by the words, a distant laugh rolled across the plain again. Faint, patient. The hyenas had not left. They were simply waiting to see who would fail first. The work began slowly, almost painfully so. Dr. Maya Reynolds moved with the patience of someone who knew that speed. Here was another word for disaster. Each small scoop of dirt came out of the tire like something being exhumed rather than removed. The packed earth was dense and cold, carrying the smell of rot and old rain. The calf shuddered with every movement, not violently, not in panic, but in the way a body reacts when pain has become familiar. Its breath rasped, shallow and uneven, and Ethan felt the tremor travel through his own chest where the calf leaned against him. "Easy," he murmured again and again. He wasn't sure if the calf understood the words, but it seemed to recognize the sound. Its trunk curled weakly around his forearm once, then fell away. Dr. Reynolds paused after a few minutes and pressed 2 fingers gently against the calf's chest. She counted silently, eyes focused, jaw tight. "Heart rate's still high," she said. "But it's holding." One of the rangers wiped sweat from his forehead. "How much longer?" "As long as it takes," she replied, "or until it gives out. Those are the options." More debris came free. Hardened mud, bits of root, something brittle that crumbled when it hit the ground. The tire lightened by degrees so small they could only be felt, not measured. Still, when Dr. Reynolds tested it with a careful pull, it refused to move. The lead elephant watched every motion. She had shifted her stance slightly, angling her body so she stood between the calf and the distant brush. It was not a threat. It was a statement. Ethan noticed it without understanding why his throat tightened. Dr. Reynolds straightened slowly, rolling her shoulders. "We need to try lifting," she said. "Just enough to see where it catches." The rangers positioned themselves on either side of the tire. Ethan adjusted his footing, bracing the calf more firmly. Dr. Reynolds counted softly. 1, 2, 3. They pulled. The tire rose an inch, maybe 2. Hope flared sharp and dangerous. Then the calf cried out, a raw, tearing sound that cut through the air. Its body twisted instinctively, ribs pressing hard against the inner edge of the rubber. Dr. Reynolds shouted, "Stop!" They released instantly. The tire dropped back into place with a dull thud. The calf sagged, breathing fast, eyes rolling briefly before finding focus again. Dr. Reynolds knelt immediately, one hand firm on the calf's shoulder. "That's it," she said. "We don't force it. We don't break ribs today." She leaned back on her heels and looked at the tire, really looked at it. "There's steel in here," she said quietly. "Reinforcement wires. That's what's catching." The words settled heavily. A ranger glanced toward the truck. "Hydraulic cutters?" She shook her head. "Too much pressure. One slip and we shatter bone." She exhaled slowly. "We're going to have to cut it." Silence followed. Cutting meant noise, vibration, sparks. Cutting meant the calf would feel everything, even with light sedation. Cutting meant drawing attention from anything within miles that understood weakness. Ethan felt the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders before anyone spoke it aloud. "Someone needs to hold it steady," Dr. Reynolds said finally. "If it moves, even a little, this goes very wrong." The rangers exchanged a look. One of them shook his head almost imperceptibly. Not fear, calculation. They were trained, but this was different. This was not a sedated animal on a table. This was a terrified, exhausted calf with a year of pain behind it. "I will," Ethan said. Dr. Reynolds looked up sharply. "You don't have to." "I know," he replied. His voice was steady, surprising even himself. "But it trusts me, as much as it trusts anyone right now." The calf shifted as if in agreement, pressing its forehead briefly against his chest. Dr. Reynolds studied Ethan's face for a long moment, then nodded. "All right," she said, "but you do exactly what I say. No heroics." They administered a minimal dose of sedative, just enough to dull the edge of panic without stealing consciousness. The calf's eyelids drooped halfway, its movement slower but still responsive. Ethan wrapped his arms carefully around its head and front chest, holding it the way you might hold a frightened child, firm but gentle. He could feel the calf's breath against his neck, warm and unsteady. "Starting," Dr. Reynolds said. The cutter roared to life. The sound was violent, wrong in the open air. The calf jerked, muscles tensing, and Ethan tightened his grip, bracing his legs in the dirt. Black dust sprayed as the blade bit into rubber. When it struck steel, sparks flew, bright and brief against the afternoon light. The calf cried out again, claws scraping at the ground. One struck Ethan's arm hard enough to draw blood. He didn't let go. Dr. Reynolds worked with brutal precision, hands steady despite the tremor that ran through her arms. Inch by inch, she cut. The smell of burned rubber hung thick in the air. Minutes stretched into something shapeless. The herd shifted restlessly. Somewhere beyond them, a branch snapped. Then, at last, the cutter broke through one side. "Switch!" Dr. Reynolds said hoarsely. They moved to the other side. This time, the calf barely reacted, exhausted past resistance. The final cut came with a sharp crack. The tire fell away and hit the ground. Everyone froze. The calf collapsed to its knees, then slumped forward, breathing hard. The exposed skin beneath was shocking, hairless, inflamed, grooved deeply where the rubber had pressed for a year. Dr. Reynolds moved instantly, pouring disinfectant, applying ointment, administering injections and fluids with practiced speed. Ethan loosened his grip and stepped back, legs shaking. The calf drew in a breath, then another, deeper, fuller. For the first time since Ethan had arrived, the sound of its breathing did not carry pain, but the danger was not finished. From the brush, a familiar laugh rolled across the plain. Closer now. The hyenas were coming back. The calf lay still for a long moment after the tire fell away, its body heaving as if it were relearning how to breathe. Dr. Maya Reynolds worked without pause, her hands moving from disinfectant to ointment to needle with a calm that bordered on stubbornness. Clear fluid flowed into the vein she'd found, a thin line of hope feeding back into a body that had been running on almost nothing. "Easy," she murmured, more to herself than to the animal. "Just stay with us." Ethan backed a few steps away, his arms trembling now that they were empty. Blood had dried along his forearm where the calf's hoof had caught him, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed on the small chest, rising and falling, deeper than before, slower, like a tide finally turning. The lead elephant had not moved. She stood a short distance away, ears lowered but alert, watching every touch, every sound. The rest of the herd lingered behind her, a silent wall of gray. They did not interfere. They judged. The calf stirred, its legs twitched, then drew under its body awkwardly, as if the signals from its brain had to find new paths. It pushed once and slipped, hooves scraping uselessly at the dirt. A low sound escaped its throat, not pain, not fear, but confusion. Dr. Reynolds lifted one hand. "Don't rush it," she said quietly. The calf tried again, its front legs locked, shaking violently. For a breathless second, it seemed impossible that they would hold. Then, with a jerky motion, the calf rose, wobbling, its hind legs lagging behind like they belonged to someone else. It stood. Ethan felt his chest tighten as if a rope had been pulled around it. For the first time in a year, the calf stood without rubber biting into its flesh, without dead weight dragging it down. It swayed, nearly fell, then steadied again. A soft rumble rolled through the elephant herd, not alarm, something lower, something closer to recognition. Dr. Reynolds allowed herself one brief smile before her expression hardened again. "We're not done," she said, "not even close." As if summoned by her words, the laughter came back. This time it was closer, louder, multiple voices joining, overlapping, eager. The rangers straightened immediately, hands moving to their gear. "Hyenas," one of them said. "Too many." Shapes emerged from the brush, gray and lean, eyes bright with calculation. They spread out, not rushing, circling the clearing in a loose arc. They could smell blood, fresh wounds, weakness. The calf turned its head toward the sound and froze. Its legs trembled harder now, exhaustion catching up to triumph. It was in no condition to run. Ethan stepped forward without thinking. The rangers raised their rifles, not to fire, but to signal readiness. Dr. Reynolds glanced from the calf to the encroaching predators, her jaw tightening. Then the calf did something no one expected. It took a shaky step and placed itself directly in front of Ethan. The movement was clumsy, almost pitiful, but unmistakable. The calf lifted its head and spread its ears, making itself look larger than it was. A thin, broken rumble pushed out of its chest, a sound that carried more intention than strength. It was trying to protect him. Ethan's throat closed. He crouched slightly behind the calf, close enough to feel the heat of its body, far enough not to interfere. "It's okay," he whispered, though he wasn't sure who he was trying to reassure. The hyenas paused, surprised. They were not used to prey stepping forward. Before anyone could react further, a sharp crack echoed from beyond the clearing. Not a laugh, not a call, a mechanical sound. A ranger swore under his breath. "That's not an animal." Dr. Reynolds turned sharply. "Poachers?" Another crack followed, unmistakable now. Somewhere beyond the brush, a vehicle engine coughed, then went quiet. The hyenas hesitated, confused by the new noise, then drifted back a few steps. Humans with weapons changed the math, even for them. The lead elephant reacted instantly. Her ears flared wide, and she stepped forward, placing herself between the calf and the direction of the sound. The ground trembled under her weight. The rangers moved quickly, forming a tighter perimeter. One spoke urgently into his radio, calling for backup. The savannah, which had felt so vast an hour earlier, suddenly seemed crowded with threats. The calf wavered, its strength fading. Ethan moved in closer, ready to support it again if it fell. Then a sound rolled across the plain that silenced everything else. A deep, resonant call. Not panicked, not angry, powerful. From behind a line of acacia trees, a massive shape emerged. A lone elephant cow stepped into view, her skin scarred and dusty, her eyes fixed on the calf. She moved with purpose, each step measured, unstoppable. She charged straight toward the hyenas, swinging her trunk, striking one hard enough to send it tumbling away. The rest scattered instantly. The cow did not pursue them far. She turned instead and walked straight to the calf. She lowered her head and touched her trunk gently to its face, then to the raw grooves along its side. Her body trembled almost imperceptibly. The calf answered with a soft, broken sound and leaned into her. Ethan felt his breath leave him in a rush. The rangers lowered their weapons. Dr. Reynolds stood very still, understanding settling over her features like dawn. The real protection had arrived. For a long moment, no one spoke. The world seemed to shrink to the space between the cow and the calf, to the gentle press of trunk against skin, to the soft, uneven sounds they made to each other. The calf leaned fully into the larger body now, its legs folding and straightening as it tried to stay upright. Each time it wobbled, the cow adjusted her stance, patient, unhurried, as if time itself had finally slowed to match them. Dr. Maya Reynolds was the first to move. She lowered herself carefully to one knee, not to intervene, but to finish what could not wait. She administered another dose of fluids, checked the calf's breathing, then stepped back again, giving the space back to the two elephants. Her eyes were wet, though she made no effort to hide it. "That's her," Noah said quietly from beside Ethan. His voice carried no surprise, only certainty. The mother. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. He raised his camera on instinct, then lowered it again. Some moments did not want to be framed. Dr. Reynolds straightened and looked at Ethan. "We thought it was strange," she said softly, "that the calf lasted this long." Ethan nodded. It wasn't alone. They stood together as the cow inspected her calf inch by inch. She traced the deep grooves where the tire had bitten into flesh, paused at the raw skin, and let out a low, vibrating sound that seemed to come from deep in her chest. It was not anger. It was recognition. The calf answered, resting its head against her leg, eyes half closed now, exhaustion finally overtaking fear. One of the rangers approached Ethan and spoke quietly. "We've seen her before, always far off, never joining the larger herds. We thought she was just passing through." Ethan's breath caught. He remembered the hours of footage on his cards, long shots of open land, herds crossing the horizon, background movement he had never paid much attention to. He pulled a small monitor from his bag and slipped the card in with shaking fingers. Scrolling back through recent days, he stopped on an image he'd taken, almost by accident. In the distance, barely more than a shape, stood a lone elephant cow, watching. He scrolled again, and again. She was there, always at the edge of the frame, always far enough to avoid people, close enough to see. For a year, Noah said. She followed. When the calf couldn't move, she waited. When people came, she stayed back. She scared off what she could. The rest? She watched. Ethan lowered the monitor, his hands unsteady. The idea settled over him slowly, heavy and humbling. The calf had not survived by chance. It had survived because something larger had chosen not to abandon it, even when staying meant living on the margins of danger. The cow shifted her weight and nudged the calf gently. It tried to walk. One step, then another. Its legs shook violently, but it did not fall. When it did stumble, the cow stopped immediately, waiting without pressure, without impatience. The rescue team packed quietly. No one rushed them. Dr. Reynolds approached Ethan once more and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just save a calf," she said. "You gave them their timing back." Ethan watched the pair move slowly toward the open grass. The sun had begun to sink, casting long shadows that stretched ahead of them like a promise. When the calf faltered, the cow waited. When it stood again, she moved with it. They did not look back. The hyenas did not return. The sounds of engines faded. The savannah reclaimed its quiet, as if it had only been holding its breath. Ethan stood long after the elephants disappeared over a low rise, his camera finally lifted, capturing their retreating shapes as they merged with the land. When he lowered it, his hands trembled. Somewhere behind him, Dr. Reynolds spoke to the rangers about follow-up care, about tracking and protection. But Ethan barely heard her. His mind stayed with the image of a mother who had circled the edges of a world for a year, waiting for the moment when her calf could stand again. As dusk settled, Ethan felt the weight of what he had witnessed press gently but firmly into him. Not every rescue began with a call for help. Some began with a promise kept quietly, day after day, even when no one was watching. Before you go, take a quiet moment and think about this story. If you believe a mother's love never truly leaves, no matter how long or how far, type 1 in the comments. If this story made you stop and feel something you didn't expect, type 0. There's no right answer. We just want to know you were here with us. And if you'd like to hear more true stories like this, stories about animals, loyalty, and the moments that change everything, please subscribe to the channel. New stories are coming, and we'd be honored to have you watching the next one with us.